I'm Reed Price. I'm the director of the Senior Center. You probably all have heard my name. And we do a variety of activities here, um, including classes that are generated by Senior Center members and volunteers who graciously give of their time and interests and skills. And Bob has done a couple of these programs over the time that I've been at the senior center here, and we decided to try one online. So uh, thank you, Bob, for putting this together. And this is the first of a brief series. And I know that one of the things that Bob is interested in doing is making sure that you can get started on what will undoubtedly be a journey to try to capture some of your memories digitally. So thank you, Bob, and take it away.
Thank you, Reed, and thank you, Bainbridge Island Senior Center, for hosting this tutorial. So what is an eMemoir? Well, let's go to the slides and see what it says. It says that it is an electronic record of events in a person's life using digital storytelling and websites. Throughout history, mankind has always wanted to leave a record, basically a record that says, I was here and this is what it was like. Today, records contain digital stories, the most natural and effective way to communicate. Records are organized as interactive websites, the most effective way to present information. So what is a digital story? All stories basically can be represented as an arc having a beginning, middle, and end. And in the case of digital stories, the content can contain, or the narrative, normally a narrative, can contain what I refer to as assets. And these assets are contained within the story. They can be photographs, home movies, videos, digital pictures, any type of memorabilia or any type of content that is felt to be able to contribute to enhancing the story. So what is an eMemoir? An eMemoir is, again, an overarching story with several small stories contained within. And each of those stories have a beginning, middle, and end. And each of those are enhanced with assets to enhance the story being told. The eMemoir can be stored locally or on the internet. Let's take a look at an example of an eMemoir that I'm working on right now. We'll get out of this one and we'll go back to this one here. In this website, you start out with what I refer to as a main menu. In some cases, people would call this the home page. It represents themes in my life. Again, it could be anybody else's life. It doesn't have to be my life. But anyway, we've got these various themes, some of which I'm going to be changing. Let's take a look at ancestry. Now, we talked about the website having interactive features. So if we click on we have links. If we click on ancestry, we come up with a text page. And that text page has further links on it, but it tells you basically some very preliminary information about my ancestry. Now we can see that in my family bush, Some people refer to these as family trees. I always tell people we couldn't afford a family tree, so we ended up with a bush. But you can see, first of all, this is myself up here, my sister. That's one generation. We moved on to another generation here, which would be my mother, my father. And the blue represents the paternal relations, and the yellow represents the maternal relations. And each one of these blocks represents a link. So we can click on these and go to other places, which are within the website. For example, if I went to this one here, okay, it again refers to this lady. It tells you when she was born and when she died. It also tells you that the site is under construction. And if we go down to the bottom here, we can find that there's a main menu, which takes us back to the home page or the main menu. Let's go back to ancestry.com again, and let's go back to the family bush. And let's see, I didn't mean to click on that. So we'll go back to the family bush. And again, let's take a look at my mother's story. Right now it looks very preliminary, but there is a video. So if we click on that video, so we can see that immediately a video comes up. This is a 6-minute and 17-second video, and pretty much tells the story that I wanted to communicate regarding my mother. And we can look at various portions, scrub through and look at various portions, and it tells the story. And there's my mother at old age, and there's my mother at her wedding. And there's my mother. So we can go back. Go back to the main menu. Now this page here, this web page, has several different connections to it, several different links. And it starts to look more like a genealogy or a genealogical study. That's partially what I was looking for, but these are only the people who I had some type of contact with. And the content can vary. For example, I've showed you my mother's story and how that's being recorded or has been recorded on video. If we go over to this person here, okay, this is just a graphic. It's a graphic of a copy of a 100-year-old or more than 100-year-old newspaper clipping talking about this man's death. He was my grandfather's brother, and he died like a week before he was supposed to marry this lady here. So again, it could be audio, it could be video, it could be graphic. It's up to you as a producer to determine how you're going to present the information and the assets that are used to enhance the story that you're going to be telling. Back to the main menu. So how do you find the stories that you're going to tell? Well, if we refer to the literature, we'll find that there are many, many suggestions as to how to find stories. This would be the type of stories that, again, would be memoir, regular memoir. They have lists of terms, words, various ideas that are intended to spark your memory, and so that you can recall stories that you would then include in your overall stories. These would be the small stories. However, I have a different approach that I like to use. And basically it involves a spiral binder, or it could be just a number of pages that are stapled together. And the pages are marked with dates. Again, the dates, or the years, I would say, cover the period in which you intend to cover your memoir, your eMemoir. And then with some space left in between, as you can think of things that happened that year, you can make notes regarding that year. And those can then be used to refer to later. Now, the reason for the spiral binder is that it's very convenient to have handy. And so that, for example, you could put it by your nightstand. And if while you're in bed, you got an idea of something you remembered about a particular year, you have it right there with a pencil, and you can write it in. If you get to a year where you had just too many entries and you filled it up, then you can start going to things like Post-it notes and stacking them on top of each other here to increase the capacity for recording your notes for that particular year. Out on the side here, we see colored lines or edges that have been put in using felt tip pens, and the color represents a theme. If we go back to the website that I showed you, that main page, the main menu, or the home page, basically started out with themes. The ancestry was just one of those themes. Preschool was one. Employment was another one. Education was still another one. So these lines here represent themes. Now, they don't have to be continuous. You can have, for example, in some year, just a blue dot and a yellow dot, or you could have a red dot, depending upon what theme that would represent. So anyway, it's a convenient way of summarizing and gathering ideas regarding your overall story and what the small stories would be that would comprise that overall story. So now that we have all these ideas that we want with regard to our story, we're going to have a lot of content, all the assets that we're going to have, pictures, videos, sound bites, various memorabilia. How are we going to store those things so that we can find them? This would be done through a hierarchy, and the hierarchy starts with a drive. Now, the drive could be your drive in your computer. It could be a DVD or a CD. It could be any type of physical storage, even a USB or a flash card. From that, you would go to your main menu. Your main menu here would then have the themes that we're talking about. And you can see some of them that we had in my demonstration. And then I'm going to use education as a further example, because sub themes to the education would be the types of schools that I want to communicate about. One would be the grammar school. Another one would be high school. Another one would be college. And in college, then I broke it down further into the two different colleges that I went to. So this can represent a way of storing the information on your computer, and also would be a way of, at least preliminarily, showing the navigation that could be used for linking from one page, one theme to another theme. And also it can be used to link to outside sources, other outside websites. Could be anything that you found out there. So it's important to do research. The more research you do, the more meaningful assets you're going to find, and it can be used to enhance your stories. So let's take a look at how this can be constructed on the computer. Stop the share. And we'll go back over here to sharing again. And in this case, we're going to share my computer. Now, if you have, it depends upon which version of Windows, and probably also with Apple, you have as to where this page, which is referred to as my computer page, how you would get to it. In XP, Windows XP, it appears up here in the corner. It says my computer, and you click on that, and it takes you to a page that looks just like this. In Vista, Windows 8, Windows 7, it again starts out by clicking the start button down here and then going up to get computer. And when you hit computer, you get this page here. So let's say in our particular case, we're going to save our data on the C drive, which is the one that's inside the computer. If it was going to be saved on, let's say, an external source, it would show up. Anything that's been plugged in, Windows would recognize it as being plugged into your computer, and it would show up here. And you could then use it as a device to store your assets and the videos and everything else that's you're gonna have pertaining to your story. So let's take a look at Windows C. Okay, now this is what's already in Windows C, but we want to create something new. So if we go up to New Folder, now in the older versions, you click on File, and then over here, and then the first thing would be New. And when you click on New, I'll show you what you have. But once you get into that drive that we're talking about, then you want to create a new folder, and it shows up here as a new folder. So you can rename that. And let's say in our case here, we're going to call this Education. Just backspace. Oops. Didn't mean to do that. I hit something else here. Here's our new folder. It's still there. But if we go into new folder, there's nothing there. So we can now create a subfolder within that folder. And let's say we do this, which would show, let's say now name this, and I'm going to hit the backspace key again. There we go. We didn't goof up this time. And I'm going to put in here a public school. So let's go one step further and do another one. So this is a subfolder of a subfolder. And this is going to be the one for college. COL for college. Enter, and it's there. So if we go back to the drive, all right, here it is. Okay, we didn't name this, but we can rename it. We can rename this. Rename. And we'll call this Education EDU. So if you goof up the naming, just as I did, you have an opportunity to go back. All you do is right click on it and it'll bring up that menu and rename as one. Okay, it says it already contains one. Yes. So go on EDU. Okay, on EDU, we have public schools. And we have college. So these would be places where you would store all that information. Now, again, it's nice to have this hierarchy because not only is it a convenient way of storing and finding your assets and other data that you're storing, but it also gives you a very good idea as to how to create the navigation system in your website. Websites can be stored locally or on the internet. Locally, again, could be stored on any physical device, like your hard drive, your CD or DVD drive, if you have that on your computer. It could be a thumb drive, it could be any type of physical storage device. So the main thing is that you realize that this is a drive, and as such, it's the very foundation or the basis of your website. It can be also local, as I just described, or it can be on the internet. On the internet, it could be a place called YouTube, where you would put various links within the description below the actual YouTube presentation. You can also have a hybrid arrangement whereby your initial linking would be done on a local device that would click back and forth to, for example, YouTube presentations. The question came up about cost. Okay, what does it cost to store a website on the internet? Well, there's several ways to go about it. One, probably the least expensive is the one I've just talked about, which would be using YouTube. You'd have one presentation which would show your home page or your main menu. And then in the descriptions below, you would show the various links to your themes. In this case, it should be linking from the main page to those various theme pages. And then, of course, again, you can do the same with regard to sub videos or sub YouTube presentations as opposed to sub files. You can also have like I just said, a hybrid situation where maybe the only thing you'd put on YouTube would be your videos, and all the other linkages and navigation that you would have would be on a device, physical device that you'd have at home. So the question really becomes not only cost, but what type of security do you have, and how much faith do you have in the future of YouTube in this particular case? Those are all things that considerations that need to be taken when you're initially planning your site. So that pretty much covers the planning. It pretty much covers the organizing. There's one thing that's left that really we need to discuss, and that is the course. Okay, this is a 4-part tutorial. The planning, organizing, and collecting assets we covered today. The second one, which is 2 weeks from today, is digitizing assets and creating stories. We'll cover that a little more in depth. And then creating sites by pages and the links and the navigation system. And then finally, to distribute the site either locally or on the internet. They always should be built locally first, and make sure that you do all your testing, that the links work the way they should. You've got the right spelling where you need it, and any editing that needs to be done can be done before you put it up on the internet. However, depending upon how you have it on the internet, it could be fairly easy to edit things. And again, that is a consideration that should be made. So looks like maybe you've got some homework to do between now and the next one. But let's call it quits here and see what happens 2 weeks from today. Speak, just speak. Oh, you got to turn your microphone on.
I know, I know, Bob. I'm trying to find the mute button. Sorry. This has been really interesting, but the application I was looking for some input on is a little different, and I don't know if you have any insight on that. That is, I'm looking to create a repository for my family and my extended family. I had a Zoom meeting for my mom's 84th birthday, and I had heard about all of these pictures from extended families, and they'd like to have a place where they can share these. So it's digitizing this information and organizing it and posting it and managing it. Do you have any recommendations on a project like that?
Yeah, I think you're going to be seeing it. You're going to be seeing it here in this training.
Well, the tricky thing is that the people, it can't be owned by one person. People have to be able to upload pictures and download pictures. So it would be a whole extended, you know, I might have a picture of somebody I know in the family, but I don't know where it was taken or who else was there. So I could potentially post it under that person's name, and somebody else in the family could go in and fill in the gaps, that kind of a thing.
Well, in my particular case, once people knew, and you let your extended family know that you're doing this, they start sending pictures. These are the pictures that they want to have recorded in their stories.
Yeah, no, I'm
Okay.
not gonna be the webmaster for all of my family. I have a particular approach that I've done some research on, and I think I'll go down that road. There's a app, a program called Collectionaire, and they essentially take a family tree system, and they will take, and then groups of people, whether it's in Google Photos or Dropbox or, you know, Apple Photos, they can create a link and be able to download all of the pictures that they have for Aunt Betty. So I think I'm getting close, but I just wasn't sure if I think a website has to be owned by a person and has to be managed, and it's too technical for a large group of people to be able to participate in. So I think this is probably this seems to be a better fit, but this has been really interesting.
Hey, Wendy, could I suggest something? This is Patty.
Yeah, great.
I was actually looking at the same thing and thinking, I don't want to become like the webmaster or something. So this is just an idea, maybe just a starting point for people to download stuff, is you can on Facebook have a private group and where only the members can go into. And the reason I thought about that is that, let's say someone uploads a photo and then you have all these family members commenting on it, some knowledge. So it's all in one place. And then later on, you know, that app you were talking about, you could download that stuff to it later on, but just to get that information out there so people can say, oh yeah, I remember that person. So I'm looking at that private group on Facebook.
Yeah, I actually created one, but I've got, I think the tricky thing is that it still has to be organized. So,
so you've tried Facebook?
Yeah, and also feedback from some of the family members is Facebook, even though that private page wouldn't necessarily, wouldn't have that in it. Facebook has a tendency to have opinions and comments, and we just want to avoid any kind of politics in this.
Yeah, but if you're the administrator of the Facebook, you can delete any of that.
Right.
I know what you mean. You'd have to. You probably have to.
I don't mean to hijack this whole thing.
Sorry.
I have a
Patty,
couple
thank
comments.
you. I appreciate that.
Okay, in the development, this is about 10 years in the process to get to the point that I'm at, okay? And one of the big problems that I've had is that the question of how long is something going to be around, okay? How long is Facebook going to be here? How long is Facebook going to be operating the way it is? Okay, and you can ask that same question about Google. Okay, how long is, or GoDaddy? Okay, what someday I may get a notice, we're going out of business. You know, we will give you a free copy of your file, do what you want with it. I mean, and I've seen that happen. I've had it happen to me in the early days of trying to do what you're doing. So the website concept is, I believe, is the most direct way of saving information. All it needs is a browser. And the browser concept, I believe, or some form of it is going to be around forever because we've got so much data right now that depends on the browser, whether it's Chrome or whether it's Edge or whatever. And the other thing about it, and which we'll get into in distribution, is the physical content. These companies back up that information periodically. But again, I'm not very comfortable with the procedures that they use. You know, they've got these large farms, these large data storage farms, and they back them up periodically. But again, how much are they really going to do? Whereas you maintain control if you do it, you know, with your own website. And then we will be talking about a physical format of a disk that'll be around for 100 years unless you burn it or take a sledgehammer. This is what the US government is doing. Okay, it's called an M disk, capital M disk. And you can look it up and you can see all of the different testing that's been done. It's really the only great archival, I should say, way of dealing with digital information. So that's where we're going in the final chapter of this training. So I understand, okay? And I don't mean to imply that, you know, this is just something that you can sit back and let happen. But I can give you another example. If going back to the family bush, there was one of the links on there where it was my mother or grandmother's brother, and his son is still living. And when he saw what I was doing and so forth, he's into computers. And he said, Bob, he said, do you mind if I do the one for my dad? And I says, gee, no, go ahead. So if we would go back and click on that, it would be his presentation. So you'll find that there are probably a lot of people in your extended family that will say, hey, I would like to do this story for this person. So it doesn't always end up having to be totally on your shoulders. And you can ask, you can say, is there anybody in this area that would like to take this on? Yes.
I have a question about the family bush. How did you create that diagram and the links in it? And so did you start with a template?
Well, that's a good question, Herb. Again, I have a real problem with templates because they limit you almost every time you try to use them. And this one was done in a paint program. It could have been hand drawn, actually, as long as it can be converted into a JPEG image. But this particular one was done in the regular Microsoft Paint.
And then you put a link in each one. So if it's your grandpa, then you put in the name, but then you have to have that actually be a link, right?
Yeah, it's a separate program that you bring the image up, and then you create links at each place that you want it, and it's physical. It's a physical location on the screen.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Wow, everybody's got it, huh? Well,
Bob,
In my case, I have a, go ahead.
No. I thought you were done, or go ahead.
All right, well, I have written 25 chapters in my life story, but it's not well, I mean, you'd have to read through every chapter, and it covers everything like education and what's going on with the kids and so on. And then I have appendices. I have 15 appendices. One of them traces my father's life, my mother's life, their life together, old photos of ancestors and so on. But the problem is it's not, who wants to read through all those chapters? So I'm thinking I've got to reorganize that material I've already written so it's going to be more accessible. So what you told me about today is very useful. Thank you.
Well, Herb, I guess
thank you.
the big question here, Herb, is who wants to read? I mean, if you look at what's going on in our education system today, much of the education is being handled digitally through websites, just as we're talking about here.
Yes. Well, one of the problems is I had 20 cousins that were about my same age. 15 of them have died. I'm 79, and there are only 5 of us left of the cousins at this level. And so I'm interested in getting it to the children of my cousins and making it available to them.
Well, they probably have photographs at least of those people, and you can put those together as a slideshow, a narrated slideshow. And we'll talk about the software to do that.
Okay, thanks.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Mary?
Well, I had a question, Bob. This is Noelle. I'm wondering, have you used a service to digitize your, camcorder videos that you have, and slides, maybe a service you like?
Well, if you got a modern camcorder, it's already digitized. Are you talking about the older VHS type camcorder?
Right.
All right. Again, yes, you can send those tapes, those cassettes into various companies, and they will convert them for you. However, for $10 or less, you can purchase a device that you plug your output from your camcorder, or if you're going to play it on a VHS recorder, into this device, and on the other end of the device is a USB, and it usually comes with some software, and you can play it and record it, and it'll be in a digitized form in your computer.
So that's what you've done it yourself rather than use a service.
Don't have to use a service. You can do it yourself.
Right. Okay.
We've used Costco for changing our slides.
Your
It's
slide,
been good.
You used Costco?
Mhm. They put it on Google.
Oh, all right. That's good news. We can add one bit of information. We had a relative 95 who just passed away, and his daughter finished his 400-page book. And it's about $100 to distribute the copies out to the children. So
okay.
that's something for you to think about, Herb.
There's another
thanks.
issue here, and we talked about what to do, and there's another issue about when to do it. Okay, I talked about the World War II fighter pilot. I was actually commissioned. People who knew about him came to me and said, "Would you do this?" And I ended up, doing it at no charge. And it was almost all interview, but I covered the interview with pictures of pictures of planes, pictures of medals and awards, pictures of sounds. I included sounds of an engine. And then when I got it done, at least the way I thought was done, I previewed it for him. And he was very happy with what he had. He says, "Thank you very much." He says, "Now I can die." He did about a month later. Okay.
Wow.
We have, Herb would know who I'm talking about here, a member of a club that we both belong to, who was really intent on getting this done. And his whole story was military. His whole life was military. And so we spent quite a bit of time digitizing, but he had Alzheimer's, and he was intent on getting this done before or while he still quit, but we didn't make it. At the end, the Alzheimer's took over very quickly, and he was not capable of being interviewed or anything there. I mean, we had all of these digitized still images and so forth. But anyway, I think he still may be in a VA hospital. But his wife asked me, she said, the various information that you collected, is it possible I can get a copy of that so that maybe my son could do something with it? And I gave him a DVD with the information on, but he never made it. So, none of us know how much time we've got left. We don't have a prescribed clock that says this is your life. So that's something to consider is when to do it. In other words, what I'm saying is do it now.
What is the name of that thing that you talked about that you can film your own digital
Me.
thing?
I mean, convert your digital?
Yeah.
Well-
No, the thing you can use a camcorder with to record, or you can record a camcorder. Was theirs?
You mean the older type camcorder?
Yeah.
Okay, well, if you go into eBay.
Yeah.
And just in their search for VHS converter, and you'll probably find, well, here, maybe we can do it.
Oh, that's okay. I'll search.
Okay, you'll
Thank you.
probably find all kinds of them at all kinds of prices, and some will include software and some will not include software. However, you probably will probably be discussing free software in a couple sections here that will allow you to do that also.
Okay, I'll wait.
As long as you have the device. You need the device. And like I said, I've seen them for around $7, $8.
So they're just called VHS converters.
Yeah, VHS converter.
So
Well-
do you have one place like where you have a bunch of pictures stored and then others that you put into the story? Or,
Well, I go through them physically, go through the pictures if you're just talking pictures. And, there's some that,
yeah, you want to delete.
pictures of, some place out in the country that you really don't care about anymore. I don't even digitize those. I only digitize the things that I think I'm going to be able to use. And then they get stored in that hierarchical format that we talk about.
My problem with all the slides we converted, I've got a bunch of them need to be deleted,
Right.
But I have to make these decisions of which ones to keep, maybe, but still there might be two sections, the ones you're just keeping in case somebody wants them and the ones you put in your stories.
Well, you can create the various folders the way I showed you,
Mm-hmm.
and just transfer what you want, the ones that you want, into the folders, the appropriate folders. What format are these converted slides in now? Are they on a disk or?
They're in Google Photos.
They're in Google. Okay, well then just drag them from Google into the appropriate folder.
Yeah, okay.
Now, one thing though that you need to be careful about here is some of these services that will store your photos for you, they store them in unique formats. And those unique formats kind of force you to use their way of looking at them. So again, that's another reason that I don't recommend that, people start storing them on those free, so-called free services. You really don't need to do that. I mean, you can create, as I showed you, you can create your own file system. Catherine, no questions.
I have one. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Catherine.
I got a question.
Yeah.
I went on vacation here a few years back. Came back with about 3,500 pictures from that, all this digital stuff. My son and I were both taking pictures. And it's really an unwieldy pile of stuff if you do it that way.
Okay, I didn't understand your question. Or was it a quick comment?
It's more like a comment. It's
Oh, okay,
this happened to you.
okay.
That's my problem too.
Yeah.
Got too many.
Bob, I think I love your notebook idea for organizing things, because you can keep adding things in the different categories and then you go look for them. You find the material and it helps set you up. Otherwise, I'm just sort of grabbing stuff here and there. It gives you a much better method to find different ways. And I have photographs, but maybe I want to go online and get some articles or something and to add to those different sections. I don't know yet, but you're giving me some good ideas. I appreciate it.
Well, it sounds like you're already starting to use your imagination as to what you want to do.
Well, it's kind of fun. It's getting exciting now.
Yeah. This is not something that, it's not a quick fix type thing.
No, this is a big process.
Yeah, it's your life or the life of someone else. Maybe this is the life of your mother or father or whoever, but it's real significant. And the more time you put into it, better the production is, the more it's going to be used and appreciated.
Yeah, I think this will be fun. It's giving me a good project.
Yeah.
I need staying power.
I keep my notebook on
Yeah.
in a Word file,
Well,
arranged by timeline.
you can do that. You can do that. However, The reason I suggest the notebook is it's something that you can carry around with you, or you can have it laying on the counter. And when you get the idea, boom, you've got a place to put it.
Right.
Might be you wake up in the middle of the night with an idea, and this is where you put it, so you don't lose it.
Mhm.
Have Word, then you've got to get into the computer, and that may not always be convenient, even if you're doing this on your phone.
Right.
Not
So I
always.
use notes and then I put it in when I go to the computer.
Okay. All right. Herb.
In your spiral notebook, you had everything organized chronologically in a timeline. Do you ever have anything in your website that's a timeline? I mean, for example, I went to a rural school. We lived on a farm. I went to a rural school. That's all sort of integrated together in growing up on the farm, and separating out education from other aspects, sports and family. And to me, it didn't make much sense. It's important to have everything together and do it chronologically.
Well, Herb, if you
So
go back and remember the example that I used for education, okay, it started out with grade school. It then went to public school, which would have high school in there, then college, in the different colleges. So yeah, I think by nature of the name, for example, if you were going to do this, you might want to call your early schooling Little Red Schoolhouse or something like that. People would look at that and they'd know that this is a elementary type school. So it's not chronological by date. It's chronological by definition of school. Does that help?
yes, although again, I think everything's sort of integrated together. I mean, I had
Oh, excuse me.
one chapter is growing up on an Iowa farm. It covers the first 8 years of my life. Then there's another one. And then the next one was growing up in Colorado, where I went through from 4th grade up through high school. And so that's all together, and it covers everything: sports, friends, jobs I was doing, everything I was doing in that time period. So I don't know. That's how I've organized it so far.
But you can break it down differently and organize it differently if you wish also.
Right. I think
Yes.
I
Yeah,
think
I appreciate that.
something that I like to do is I take a certain time in my life, maybe when I was in 3rd grade or something, and I remember something that I did with my best friend, like having a picnic in the garbage dump, sitting on an old broken rusted tractor, having cheese sandwiches, and just turning it into that story rather than just chronologically. You could organize chronologically, but what's a story in there that might be interesting? And I think that as you put it together, then what pops out during those times.
And not everybody would be necessarily interested in that part of your life.
No, I'm not saying that they would be, but it's just fun for me to do it. I don't care if anyone reads it. I think my daughter would read it. She just would.
Yeah.
But it just sort of, I would like to get it down because I think it could be really fun, and it's interesting what comes back into your memory. And it also is a great way to remember really wonderful things in your life.
And people. And people.
Happy times and things that you're really grateful for that you've forgotten about, especially during COVID. That this is a kind of a time where we need to think about grateful things when we can't do anything. So I'm getting off a bit, but
there's another way to celebrate other people's lives who are important to you, people that have helped you somewhere along the way. For whatever reason, you can recognize them here. I guess when you look at your regrets in life, one of my biggest regrets in life is that there was some of the people that really helped me, I never really expressed my appreciation to them the way I did. So this is a way of kind of making up for it. Not that they'll ever see it because they're almost all dead now, but it's a way I'm dealing with some of my regrets.
And that's what I did I've done that a couple times when really great close friends have died. I'll send a story to the widow or the widower, the surviving spouse. And that's what I've been doing is, well, hopefully not too many more right now, but it is that time. But
Right.
these are very close people to me. And so I was able to make a story of our time together. And it was really appreciated. And I appreciated it too, because they were so close to me.
Well, folks, you've got a lot of work to do between now and the next meeting, which is 2 weeks from today. Get your notebook together. Start putting down the years and what you think you need to record for those years. Start looking at your memorabilia. What photographs do you want to use or do you think are important? Are there any other things, pins, any objects that were collected that can be photographed? Everything has to be digitized. Here you're putting a digital representation of the item.